You hit on something, and I want to segue into one of the questions that we have from one of the people watching, and that is, I think you mentioned you had a conversation about safety, but then also life, protection, things like that, somewhere along those lines. Um, One of the questions from James Greer, and that is, do you have discussions with your children about the use of force um, if things were to fold or as things were to unfold in real time? So have you had that conversation about or around not just what the firearm can do, but then also the situation in which you need to use it? So let me start. I'm going to go with Quincy. I'm going to come back to you, Quincy, Colin, Chad, and then Stephanie. So Quincy, have you had to have that conversation about beyond just this is what the firearm is, but now these are the types of situations in which you may need to use it, or you may see me using it in a moment of defense?
Yeah, we have those conversations all the time. It's usually those to the spot moments. We talk about use of force all the time. So we see what's going on with the news and media and everything. We see the shootings or people are brandishing firearms, and my son, we talk about those cases of what we know as factual or what the media is reporting. So, so my son understands the errors of other people and understands what they did wrong, and versus what I have taught him or what I have talked to him or discussed to him about the proper use of force. So we live in the state of Illinois that, I'm a concealed carry holder as well, and brandishing a firearm is 100% illegal in Illinois. So we don't have open carry in this state at all. So we always talk about the song, the Outkast songs, Bombs Over Baghdad, and there's that hook, and there's don't bring out the thing out unless you're ready to bang. So he understands that it doesn't matter what happens with me, I'm not putting out that firearm unless I know for 100% certainty that somebody's trying to take my life, yes, or whatever. So he understands that.
At what age did you first start to have that conversation? Just as a piggyback to that, at what age did you first start to have that conversation around these are the situations in which you use it? Did you start that when you first started discussing firearms with them, or was it a gradual evolution to that point where you began to have that conversation?
It was a gradual conversation. I'm pretty sure. I don't know the exact point, but I know he was in high school, and okay. I think once I got my concealed carry license, that's when I believe those conversations start happening, and you start seeing those articles, what's going on, and him and he's not a Facebook kid. None of these kids are on Facebook anymore, but
that's what's old people.
So, but I bring out these clippings. We talk about the news, and we talk about all those situations, and he understands that. He has a good understanding why or when is the appropriate time to use that for. So we had that. I would say freshman year in high school, we probably start having those conversations. Okay. And it's not, when I talk about, and we talk about, because we always talk about, ever since before the gun, we always talk about self-defense, ever since he was a little kid. So we have a saying in our house, more men do not start fights, but we finish them. Meaning that we don't escalate that situation until that person who come to our face escalates that situation to that point. So we won't start it, but we will finish those situations. So I think ever since he was a little kid, we talked about self-defense without the firearm. But by the time he got in high school, we introduced the conversation with the firearm.
Okay, so the firearm is just another component, and overall, what is making sure that you're managing your safety conversations. Yep. Great. Colin, when you first had that conversation with your kids, kind of, what ages were? I'm sorry, have you had to have the conversation regarding use of force with your kids?
Yeah,
I shouldn't say kids because they're adults now, but
the conversation happened when they were younger, preteen and teenagers, and just like Q, it's a matter of understanding how to carry yourself
Mm-hmm.
right? Not every fight is your fight. You know, you can walk away. You can let people talk. But the minute that they invade your personal space, right, then there's a problem, right? So there's no one who should be within 3 feet of you. It's just there's no reason for them to be there, right? So that conversation was had real early on. They grew up in the suburbs. I grew up in the city, so they have a little bit different perspective.
Yeah.
So we had an opportunity to travel into. They grew up in New Jersey. I had an opportunity to travel back to New York. We went to see the World Trade Center memorial site. So we took the train in, and that was one of the best things we could have ever done instead of driving, is because I was able to point out all of the instances where situational awareness is key. You
Okay.
know, making sure no one's on your back. Watching people, who are coming approaching you. So it's just all little tidbits of situational awareness, avoiding the situation, evading the situation, right? Being able to know where to jet if you have to, right? And if all else fails, you need to be as violent as possible, and not be ashamed to do that, right? And
Mhm.
like Q said, you're gonna stop we're gonna stop this threat. It's not gonna be prolonged. So they know that that's the way I operate, right? So if they ever see a gun out, they know it's coming out for a reason. It's never brandishing, never. I'm never going to be arguing with someone. I'm going to always de-escalate. I'm going to be very humble. But if someone brings it to me, I'm going to be very violent, and they know that.
Mhm.
Great.
Yep.
Chad, how about you?
Well, it's interesting because obviously, I talk to my son about and my daughter really about situational awareness. I talk about why I have this, and based on the experience that we had in 2007, where my wife and I were on our anniversary, and my house got robbed while we were out. We came back, the door was kicked in, right, and
Mm.
so we got back home probably about 7 o'clock, kind of early-ish. We saw it out, said, well, I guess we gotta go get a gun. And so I went to go get a shotgun right then and there, because after the police came and the maintenance person wasn't going to be able to be there till the morning, the door was pretty much off the hinges. So I stayed up all night with a shotgun. So they know that it's for self-defense and for defense of the home, both of them and, for myself while I'm out. So I can get back home safe, right? But also, it's really weird because my son and my daughter, they're going to school in this era of the increased prevalency of school shootings. Not that school shootings are happening in the pandemic type of a fashion that people say they are, but if we're going to be honest, there is an uptick in school shootings since Columbine, right? A bunch of copycats thereafter, right? And I think that we have to mention that and speak to it. And so as a parent, speaking about school shootings and speaking about how to avoid conflict and understand the people and the things that are going on around you, read the body language, things like that. There was a threat at my son's school his senior year, right?
Mm.
There was a gunman threatening to come to the campus, or someone's threatening to come to the campus. And I told my son, if you need me to, or if I hear of anything going on, or if you need to call me before police get there to stop something, call me first, and I will come there and get you out of there with whatever I got on me. Or I will go to the house and get something to come out and come and get you. And I was very, very serious when I said it. And that's not to be, flippant or not take it serious, or even front like I got like John Wick level of training, because I don't. But at the same time, though, I understand that my family, I need him to understand that this is for a last resort, no other choice type of an option.
Correct.
When it comes to my family and my children, I will do anything to make sure that they get home safe. Just like you said, the idea is to get back home safe with all the holes you left with, right? And if I have to be the one to make sure you do that, then I'm going to be the one to make sure you do that. As a protector, that's what my responsibility is. That's what my pleasure is, right? And so, but again, though, the main thing, just like Colin said, is really making sure that they understand to be situationally aware.
Yes.
They understand that if you can avoid a conflict or if you can avoid something or de-escalate, then do that. It's not about being a punk or whatever people try to make you think it is. It's about being smart, right? You don't have to get into a fight. What did Bruce Lee say in that movie, Enter the Dragon, The Art of Fighting Without Fighting, right? My man, he had my man up on the boat, right? It's really stuff like that. Use your head first.
Yeah.
Before you think about getting into any type of fisticuffs or any other conflict struggle beyond that. Use your head and your words if you can first. When you ain't got no other choice, you don't have no other choice. That's that. But think about the things you could do all the way before then that will put you in a position where you don't have to have a choice but to use a firearm or to deal with violence.
That's a great point. And you talked about situational awareness. Corey Henderson has just commented, you know, he always tells his youngins, probably his kids and people in his family, keep your head on the swivel. You know, so absolutely, you know, that making sure that you're aware of your surroundings. My youngest daughter, well, my oldest is 20, carry the one. She'll be 28. Well, see, here's the thing. My daughters are less than 2 weeks apart in birth dates. So, you know, my youngest one just turned 13, so I always had to do the math and carry the one and figure out. So my youngest just turned 13. My oldest is going to be turning 28 in less than 2 weeks. So they're less than 2 weeks apart in terms of birth dates. So I always have to remind myself when one's birthday is past, the other one is coming. But nonetheless, my youngest daughter, she's in the suburbs of Chicago. So she's in one of the nicer suburbs of Chicago. So she's one of those, she hasn't been exposed to a lot. So trying to bring her level of situational awareness has always been a challenge because there's a disconnect between our discussions and her reality. Her reality is, you know, it's this nice, you know, semi-affluent suburb of Chicago, suburb of Chicago. But, you know, those things don't happen here, or that couldn't happen here. Or I'm, you know, in her eyes, I'm 142 years old. So, you know, that happened way back then. It's not like that anymore. But the only thing, but to your point though, and Chad, you hit on it, and that is in her mind, the perception is there's a certain fear level because of the increase or the perception of increased school shootings. That's where her fear comes from. Not things that can happen to her in the community or other situations. It's more so what may happen to her at a school, because that's what's been, for lack of a better term, sensationalized through the media and such. Although it does happen, it does occur. That's where her largest fear comes from. Not necessarily something every day that is more likely to happen within the communities from a community standpoint. Stephanie, you know, have you talked?
It's a little tougher with mine.
Yours are younger,
but they're a little younger, but we still work on our emotions, controlling ourselves.
Yes.
You know, using our voice and our words instead of screaming.
Yes.
And then also as far as like our firearms and how that comes into play, they have Nerf guns, but they're not toys. They're given to them for them to work on their target practice for when they have, you know, their real firearms. So I in my mind, to me, that's a gradual progression of, you know, introduction of use of force and understanding that this is not a toy. This is real life, and this is the only times that you use it, you know, when you're on the range practicing or when mommy needs to carry it for her self-defense. But definitely, I absolutely am going to have that conversation. I don't use big words like situational awareness, but I always tell them, pay attention. Growing up, my mom always told me, you know, stay on point, be on point. You never want to get got. You know what I'm saying? And that's all that is. So I always tell my children, pay attention. What's going on around you? Don't focus here. Look around you. So those gradual progressions is going to lead to that bigger conversation of, okay, well, yes, the threat is in front of you, but at this point you have pulled out your firearm. You're about to put your finger on the trigger, but the assailant has now retreated. Well, at that point, put your firearm down. you have de-escalated and you no longer need to continue on that use of force. So yes, eventually we will definitely get to that conversation.
You know, and kind of wrapping this part of the conversation up, the consistent thing that I'm hearing is the firearm is the last measure, not the first measure, not the first point of contact. You know, you're not trying to be a badass because you are carrying a firearm. You're really using that as a last resort and the last means because you've exhausted all your other options, whether it's through conflict resolution or whether it's through de-escalating the situation. I know for me, you know, my motto is you can call me whatever you want as long as I'm walking this way or you're walking that way. You can call me whatever you want, but once you get into that space, you know, that's a different level of that's a different conversation. Now, you know, the defense mechanisms kick in, and that's when I have to go to a different set of rules of engagement because now it's moving. It has the potential to move from the nonviolent verbal to physical, and then you know, how do I then protect myself so I'm not? And anything can kill you. One thing I've noticed, well, not noticed, but I've learned through the years. You can be killed by a punch. You can be killed by tripping and hitting your head, being pushed down. I have seen it. So you can be almost involved in any type of physical situation in which it can become fatal. So, you know, I think that's one of the things that I'm really glad that the group has been able to emphasize, and that is the firearm is the last measure, not the first. It's not about being a badass, not about showing how tough you are. Actually, it's tougher to walk away from a situation. So if you can do that, the other pieces, are piece of cake.